Hi there. Welcome to the pod where spirituality is accessible and exciting.
Do you find yourself drawn to the magical and mystical side of life?
If you're ready to explore and expand your spiritual path,
Then you are in the right place.
I'm Jennafer.
And I'm Lola.
We are modern
mystics.
Sometimes I cannot breathe. I'll be calling out. Wanna look at me like they cannot breathe. I'll be calling out.
Welcome to our modern mystic folk group. We're so excited to have you guys here. And today we're going to kind of dive into spirituality as a modern mystic. I work with a lot of clients, as does Jennafer. And one of the common things that I've heard recently a lot is helplessness, hopelessness. What can I do? How is it even possible to plan for a future, especially among people in the 20 or older teens age groups? They feel like there's no point in planning a career. It just feels hopeless because things are chaotic. Things are so divisive. Things are so intense. Have you been experiencing that with people?
Yes, I've had a lot of clients that have asked me anything from are they even gonna is their money gonna be safe?
Yeah.
To like, am I gonna be safe? And all kinds of things that are just very fear-based, which is understandable because there is a lot of divisiveness and there is a lot of stress. And then I have other clients that believe the earth is in some sort of like ascension period, and this is like the turmoil that happens before it grows. I'm sure there's growing pains everywhere all the time, but I have heard a lot of people just feeling like they don't know what to do or that there's anything they can do.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. So, for me, and I think for you, but you'll speak for yourself, obviously, I think that spirituality is my way through those things. Spirituality touches all of my life. It navigates my relationships with others, with the planet. It informs how I view like the political upheaval we're in, no matter which side of the spectrum you're on, or even if you're right in the middle. I don't think anyone alive today would say there's not upheaval in politics around the
I
globe.
agree.
So I use spirituality to help me in all of these areas of life as a modern mystic, and finding your own authentic path is what we're here to help you do so that you can navigate any part of your life that you feel like, ooh, this is rough right here, right now.
Yeah, exactly. Because maybe you're not as stressed about, I don't know, the politics or the state of the world, but maybe you're having some issues with, oh, I got a frog in my throat. Sorry. Pardon
With
me.
frogs in your throat.
I
It could be
know.
anything, really.
Oh my goodness. But maybe you're having like interpersonal issues or differences of opinions in your community, in your family. I think spirituality can be a very grounding force and a really a way to sort of stay centered when things feel chaotic. And I think when we're centered, we tend to react less. We tend to be a little more thoughtful or mindful about what we do. And honestly, we just tend to have a little bit more peace. And who doesn't want a little more peace, you know? And
Send me up for
I'm
that.
just like, holy cow. So yeah, I think that's really one of the things about, talking about spirituality as a modern mystic is that it really can be in all aspects of your life. It doesn't have to be, I go to service once a week, or, I pray every day, or it can be a lot of things. And so we're going to explore a lot of different ways that spirituality can be helpful in modern times.
And hopefully you get some practical tips, and you can check out some of our future podcasts where we dive into those tips a lot more deeply. So
Absolutely.
hang in there. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to you as we get going here for a minute, maybe.
Awesome. Well, I think one of the things that I really love about spirituality in modern times is that it really is evolving. It's really changed. It used to be, in smaller societies or in smaller groups, everyone had the same religion or the same practice, and they would do it the same time or in the same place or that kind of thing. But spirituality feels like it's becoming a little broader than religion and a little bit more personal. It also just feels kind of like it doesn't have to be locked into a particular box, religious or otherwise. And I think more than anything, what modern mystics are looking for is seeking meaning, a little bit of meaning, a little bit of perspective, maybe connection, and some purpose. And spirituality can help with all of those. I mean, sometimes that does happen in a religious framework, that's fine. But for many others, spirituality is way more of an individual experience.
Well, as you were talking, I was remembering. I'm an oldie over here, right? I'm getting up there, but I remember it was very uncommon for someone to not have a church that they attended. 90 or 80% of people attended a church.
Yes.
And they went weekly or monthly. Sometimes people went just for the high holidays, as we call it.
Yes.
But there was some place that they
Yes.
went. And in part of doing that, going to a place, community was implied, if not real. And it gave people a place where there were like-minded, maybe, in quotes, like-minded people, whether they actually were or not. It was the impression of that.
Yes.
By attending the same place, that we're all on this same path together. And I think as spirituality has individualized, that's part of this loneliness epidemic that we're facing.
Yes.
And so part of our purpose here with creating Modern Mystic Folk Podcast is so that you guys can come and join us and we can be a community here. And we are walking a similar path. They look very different. The purpose and the intention is the same.
I love that. I think religious freedom, especially here in the U.S., has always been a very big tenet of the founding of this country and all of that. And so I think in the ether is also this, I don't know, like that sameness, if that makes sense, or like that homogenous aspect of religion. Like if we wanted this, it seems like some people wanted the small town church to just be nationwide, if that makes sense, or
Yes.
the small town
Yes.
practice is everywhere, that kind of thing. And I think one of the best things about the fact that spirituality is so individualized is that there are so many ways to connect, right? Whether it's to a purpose or a deity or the universe or nature or whatever you want to connect to, or even like-minded people. There's so many ways to do that we can facilitate our own communities. We can
Yes.
facilitate our own ways of doing things. We can do it in a solitary manner. We can do it with other people. But the idea is so we're able to do a little bit more connecting overall. And I also feel like sometimes just spirituality is exploring what your values are, or, knowing what, like living with a little bit more intention, things like that. So I don't think spirituality has to be a big, huge nationwide thing for it to be effective. I think there are a lot of individual paths that sometimes can cross over, like you were saying, and sometimes are just kind of our own thing, and sometimes can be done in like smaller groups or that kind of thing. And I just kind of like that there's such a variety. I feel like that is a big advantage instead of we only have to do things a certain way. I'm also just I really like freedom. So I feel like that's like the tenet of my life. But
She for sure does.
yeah, I really do.
As you're talking, I'm thinking, yes. And while in theory, that is the tenets of this country, they for sure suppressed anyone who didn't believe the right religious
Yes.
philosophy, like the entire indigenous people of this nation.
Absolutely.
Nations, their nations, right?
Yes.
So remembering that is part of our roots here in the United States, that championing people whose religious beliefs differ is really what we should have done in the beginning. And maybe we get the chance to do that now. And that's part of what I like about what we're doing is
Yes.
believe what resonates and brings joy and peace and hope and a groundedness to you, and celebrate that in others, whether you agree with what they believe or not.
Yes. I love that. And I think that's one of the great things about trying to be a spiritual person in a modern world is that you don't have to be defined by whatever religion you were born into or affiliated with or whatever. We can actually find resonance beyond those practices or including those practices, whatever works. It's much more personal, and it's also very evolving and very fluid. So it doesn't need to be you find the right thing to do and then you just do it for the rest of your life. Sometimes you'll find different things work in different ways, and but I think that spirituality is more of a practice, a habit, the way we interact with other people, and maybe even just the moments where we have a little bit of silence or we're kind of reflecting on some of the bigger issues in life and how we feel about them, which I think is really important, especially if we're going to talk about political climate, because in many parts of the world, the political climate is very divisive. I feel like I was listening to somebody, I think it was Trevor Noah, and he was saying that, because he's from South Africa, so he was saying that Americans treat politics like football. And that he just, like in where he's from, people are just different parties and no one cares. But here, if you're not you're not rooting for the right team, that, you're like not with us, you're against us. And that kind of mentality was really interesting to me. And that outside opinion is really important too. But I think, spirituality can be more about how you process things, or, caring for even just your personal, emotional, and mental well-being. And it doesn't mean that we need to be removed from political conversation or we need to avoid it all the time. It can just kind of hopefully help us deepen our interaction with it so that it's a little bit more mindful, a little less reactive.
A couple of thoughts came as you were speaking. I love Trevor Noah, by the way. He is hilarious and brilliant, and just the best. If you don't know who Trevor Noah is, go listen to him. He's amazing. Yes. Okay, side note. But back to what we're talking about here. A few thoughts about how different phases of life for me have had different big questions and different strategies for dealing with those big questions. One of the common strategies today is to cut people out or cut people off as a way to deal with, I don't know what to do with you. You're so different from me. I have to draw a line. And I think it's a healthy strategy, right? If you're being abused, get out, draw a boundary. Right. If someone is aggressive towards you and you don't know how to deal with that, that's a great place to start. But it does lead to extreme divisiveness. Yes. We have grown so unable to tolerate or hear anything different than me that no wonder we're so divisive. Now, I'm not saying that I should tolerate white nationalist speech around me. Right? There are boundaries that we can't tolerate because they're so harmful to people. But I watched a close family member of mine used to participate in, I wouldn't say all the way far right. She's never been all the way, but probably if this is far right, to the extreme at like 90, she's been at 75 or 70, right? She's right there. And she then moved to voting straight Democrat in the last election. Oh, interesting. And just to watch her transition and what she could listen to and talk about when she was at 70 versus what she could talk about when she was at 49, let's say. She's never going to be 10, which would be far left, let's say.
Yes.
She's 49. That's probably as far left as she'll ever go. But what she can listen to and tolerate and hear from me, who's probably at -5, is very different than what she
Yes.
could listen and talk with me about at 70. And being able to hold space for someone who's at 90
Yes.
is just as important for me as it is that she can listen to me when I'm at -5. So how do we navigate and how do we tolerate and actually be patient and sit with and try to understand someone who's so opposite us? The value of opposition is you can see your blind spot. If you're sitting across from me, you can see what's behind me and I can see what's behind you.
Yes.
And so while people that are far right and don't have the empathy that I have for a refugee or a person that is in this country for whatever reason, I don't care what the reason is. I have empathy that that's another living being and they should be treated with compassion and care because I would want that and I would want that for my family. So that's my viewpoint. And someone that's opposite that, it's hard for me to view them as having good humanity, being a good person. But I'm sure their family and friends think they're a great person.
Oh, sure. Everyone, I think one of the biggest things about, I don't know, becoming an adult is that everything isn't black and white. And
Yes.
people can have very different points of view that are just equally true for them. And that's okay, as long as, no one's, I don't know, destroying or hurting other people. But I think sometimes we don't ever grow there and we stay in very black and white thinking, even though, you and I could have a completely different, not just opinion, but experience of something.
Yes.
And go from there. I was talking to a friend and I said, well, I never had a problem with Dobermans because there was one up the street when I was a kid. And they would walk the dog and he was always really lovely. And so I never really thought, oh, Dobermans are really difficult dogs or ferocious or whatever. And she said, well, my sister got bit by one when I was a kid, so I thought they were pretty ferocious. And so we're having like very different experiences, but I didn't try to say, oh, well, that doesn't mean that Dobermans aren't vicious or that they're all, I didn't try to convince her. I just said, oh my gosh, that must have been horrible. And so I think one of the things about spirituality and being grounded in our values and our spirituality is that it does kind of remind us that everyone's just doing the best they can.
Yeah.
We're all just humans and we all, want food on the table and shelter and that kind of thing. And we want to feel like we belong and that we matter. And beyond like ideology or party lines or even social media debates, that spirituality can really ground us in what we can do now and how we can just open up a little bit to respect other people's experiences.
Yeah. I think one of the tenets that I espouse as a modern mystic, and maybe this will work for some of you, is it's often the case that we're not heard. We're not listened to. When is the last time you sat with someone where you felt heard on a deep level? Not a therapist,
Right.
in casual world,
Yes.
where you were fully listened to. We were having a conversation yesterday and we were at a restaurant and I was like, I really want to know more about Jennafer. Tell me about you. And the dishes are clinking. And my mind is like, oh, am I taking too much time here? Do we need to leave? How much attention was I able to give Jennafer, who I love deeply, and we are aligned, right? There's no divide. There's no hard times between us. We're
There's
pretty
noise.
similar. But even in a moment where I deeply care about someone, I can find myself not that grounded in the
Yes.
moment, distracted by the moment even.
Absolutely.
And so one of the tenets that I have tried to put as a forefront of my spiritual practice is being present and hearing them first. Listen first.
Yes.
Once we understand one another, why is this border security so important to you? What is prompting that in you? And when you hear and understand, usually it's rational and reasonable. Sometimes it's super fear-based, but it's still rational and reasonable based on that fear.
Yes.
And once you understand where they're coming from, then you can have a reasonable conversation.
It's so true. I feel like you're right. Like listening to understand is a very lost art because a lot of times, especially if we're going to talk about politics or the state of the world or current events or whatever, we're going to try to get our opinion in there. And sometimes if you're just listening to really try to understand where someone's coming from, and you can say to them, oh, that must have been really scary for you, or that must have been really hard, or, something that's more sympathetic or empathetic, then you find a lot more connection than if you, I don't know, one up each other and start going, oh, well, that happened to you, this happened to me. And therefore what you went through isn't that big a deal, And so I think there's a lot of wisdom in just trying to really, really listen to understand. It really builds bridges. And it helps us be able to respond instead of react.
Correct.
And I think that then that person really feels like you're with them instead of you're just listening to one up them or talk to them or that kind of thing.
And I think in order to, excuse me, to sit and be present with someone in that deep way, right? Probably this isn't going to happen at a football game, right? Setting. I'm not talking about at the grocery store, someone's wearing a Trump shirt and you stop in the middle of the store and say, tell me about why you're wearing that shirt. Now we could do that. I'm not opposed to doing that, but they might be annoyed with you if they're in a hurry. So
they're like, I just came here to buy bread, lady.
Yeah. Get out of my way. Right. And not that, right. I'm not trying to be on either side of the spectrum here. I'm not judging where you're at. I'm trying to build bridges. But if you don't know where you're at, how can you listen deeply to someone else? Your brain unconsciously will filter what you're hearing. If you are not coming from a grounded and centered place, and that's why this is part of my spiritual practice. In order to be present and listen, I must first have taken care of me. And if I'm not grounded, if I'm not centered, if I don't know what my values are, if I'm so caught up in the storm, and it can be not just political. In families, we have these same divides of my lived experience with mom and dad versus your lived experience with mom and dad. And that means you're a liar or I'm a liar. And we become so divisive within families. The Doberman, you could have said, well, you're lying. Dobermans are the best ever. You're a liar. And I've watched people do that because the lived experience is different, then someone must be lying.
Yes.
No. It's a lived experience different. All of us know Dobermans can attack, and all of us know Dobermans can be great. Or in theory, we all know that.
Yes.
But in practice, do we?
That's so true. Or we think of how things should be.
Yes.
Instead of how we might experience them.
How they are.
Yes, absolutely. I had the experience of living in Japan in a bit more rural part where there aren't a lot of people who are Caucasian, and it was the first time in my life I had experienced being a minority, and so long after that, I was talking to some relative about immigration and about how when different people from different countries would come to America, they would sort of gather in the same place, right? And that's why we have like Chinatowns and Little Italies and things like that in bigger cities. And the relative was saying, well, I just don't think they should do that. They should be interspersing themselves, and really mixing in. And there was like a big talk about the melting pot and that kind of thing. And I said, okay, because I can see where that sounds like a great thing in theory. But first of all, the relative had never experienced being a minority. And so I said, okay, yes. And I know what it's like to really want to gather with people that look like you and speak your language and get where you're coming from when you're in a place that is very different and not where you came from. And so sometimes being able to gather into smaller groups or live in a particular neighborhoods or know you're within a stone's throw of a shop that sells things from your homeland is like a lifeline. It's not just, I'm not trying to mix in or I'm not trying to
Assimilate.
be part. Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Well, what's interesting about that experience is your family was not fleeing for their lives. It was a choice to go to another country and participate in their culture, and you did, and you loved it.
Yes.
That doesn't change the fact that there's a deep need to belong within being a human.
Absolutely.
And when you're with people that are like, oh my gosh, I just miss French fries.
Yes.
Or coffee, the way we make it back in California, right? Just
exactly.
those little things that make you feel at home,
Yes.
that make you feel safe and secure. They're very different in another culture, in another land, in another language. All of those things affect what it feels like to be in that place. And it's the feeling that people are seeking. And doesn't everybody want to feel at home and safe and secure?
Absolutely.
So gathering with people who understand and know how to make home the way I make home
Yes.
is natural.
That's so true. And I think also that a lot of times there's sort of like a like-mindedness that comes from gathering with, people from wherever you're from, because most people have like different shared outlooks or maybe opinions or values. Their values might even be very similar. And so just knowing that if you say something and people are going to be like, yeah, I totally get that, is just, it's a beautiful experience. It really is.
One of my favorite parts of my spiritual practice is I'm very interested in archetypes. And so I read a lot of ancient myths from all over the world. And those myths are tied to the land and the natural world always. That's where they stem from. And being from a specific land, from a place, does shape our worldview. Language stems from the land. It evolves from our lived experience from a place. And so the language is made to reflect the lived experience of that place and time. That's why language evolves.
I love that.
Because the lived experience of the place and time evolves.
Yes.
So moving somewhere and being able to communicate about the land that you understand it as. But going to Japan changed what it is like to live in California for you. It was never the same after that.
No.
And so then in California, you probably saw people that had lived in Japan.
Yes, sometimes.
So you could share what it's like to be back in the United States
Yes.
after having lived abroad.
Los Angeles has a really vibrant Japantown.
Yeah.
And so I would go there and be like, oh, this is like being back there.
I miss this. I miss
Yes.
that. It's just what it is to be human.
Yep.
So I think that taking it back to the spiritual practice, even when we look at anything, whether it's our families, our politics, I don't care what we're looking at. Spirituality has a place there for you to lean back into and go, okay, what is the humanness in this? What is the spiritual connection of this experience or this moment?
I totally agree. And I think spirituality is very centering. And sometimes, like you were talking about all the noise at the restaurant,
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much noise in, I don't know, media and
Yes.
and social media and people's opinions and radio and, everything that it's sometimes hard to even kind of cut through all of that. And so sometimes spiritual practices, even if they're like really, I don't know, short spiritual practices, they don't have to be hours and hours, but if there's something, like you're doing a little bit of meditating or taking a little bit of time for quiet or you're journaling, anything that helps you sort of reflect and be really centered, then that helps you kind of navigate that tension by cutting through the noise because you're more centered in who you are and in the connection that you have as a spiritual person. And I think sometimes, you can just create your own kind of
Yes.
ritual if you want. I knew somebody who would remind herself to stay centered by snapping.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, it was just like every so often I'd be like, "What are you doing? we're not at a concert."
She's over here,
so
yeah,
yes.
yeah, snapping it up. I love it.
I'm like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Oh, when I do that, it reminds me to get grounded." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, get it."
So I was thinking of one of the tricks and tips I use for my spirituality because, okay, time to tell on myself a little bit. You know, those keyboard warriors, that was me for a hot minute in 2020. I didn't have anywhere to be first thing in the morning.
Right.
I had this time and I would get on and read things and I would react to language. It would not be responding. It would be a reaction. Words people would use. I'd be like, these words are important to me.
Yes.
Language matters. And we each, and I know this, but am I using this skill, right? We each build our own dictionaries based upon our lived experience. What does the word happiness mean to any one person? Happiness is a mush-up of their lived experiences where they felt the emotion of happy. What does that look like? Some people have felt very little happiness. Happiness to them may be a very low vibration.
True.
So when we're communicating, especially via text or internet, these social media things,
Right.
what's their dictionary look like versus mine? I don't know. So I would react to language of, you can't call people aliens that are immigrants. And I'd be like, stop talking that way. You're harming people, right? And I would get so intensely defensive of people I don't know, people who will, dude, I'm not changing the world on my keyboard. It's not happening. I'm not writing these persuasive essays. I'm yelling at someone
Yes.
who just used a word I didn't like. Now, there's some words that I think are not acceptable. That happens to be one that I don't like being applied to people because it is harmful.
Yeah.
So it causes a reaction. I mean, but part of breath work for me became breathe for 10 seconds. And just that breathing for 10 seconds, now I'm in response instead of react. And I said
Love that.
nothing. It's not my job to correct your language.
Yes.
Go educate yourself. I might downvote your comment so less people will see it. But I don't need to control how you act in the world. It's none of my business. That's your lived experience, not mine. And stepping back and being in a spiritual place to interact in the world from changed 2020 for me.
I bet.
Instead of anger every morning, there was centered groundedness. And so these aren't just nice ideas that we're throwing out at you.
Right.
They're helpful in reality. They're
Yes.
practical. They're tangible things you can do. And we get really into this in future episodes, so please listen to them. But depending on how you're oriented, like I use the elements for air, fire, right? Wind, earth. I mean, not wind is air. Okay. Water is the other word. Okay. So taking a bath to calm down, breathing, I'm a very air person. Breathing is great for me as a centering practice, but maybe taking a drink if you're very water, an emotion-based person. I'm a very thinking-based person. So listen into those other episodes for those more detailed tips, depending on how it works for you. And we break that down. But these are real. They work.
Yes. And I think finding what works for you really does help you stay very centered when there's lots of commotion or unhappiness or, differences of opinions going on. Yeah. I think also one of the best things about spirituality, or one of the things that doesn't seem like it might be spiritual, but it is just integrity. Just being able to live in alignment with your values is a way to show people what you stand for, and a way to be very connected to who you are, and just making sure that your life is aligned with your values. So if you really believe that, I don't know,
The earth is flat.
yes. Okay. Yeah. I was going to say,
Like extreme things,
or
right?
like, you're just like, I don't know, we need more people, we need more women in leadership, or we need, all of those things.
Anything you believe.
Then, you live it. You try to bring that into your life, or you try to speak up for it. Doesn't mean you have to become like a lobbyist or an activist or anything, but there is kind of there's a disconnect that happens when we don't live in alignment with our values. And spirituality is all about connection. And so it's important for us to be able to really know that we're living in a way that shows people who we are.
Well, one of the, I don't know that we've really dug into this. So if we have, stop me and I will refer them to another episode. But with living in alignment with our values, knowing what your values are, which we do have an episode about that. But I was thinking about like flat earth that just popped out of me. We were having a conversation about, it's so interesting that people genuinely believe that, truly believe that. And they're convinced that's reality and that's true. And what it would be like to live my life with that value, that the earth is flat. And then how would that shape what I do, who I vote for, how I have relationships with family who all tell me the earth is not flat, you're wrong. And I can see how people get so caught up in these things and so persuaded because they are living their values. And so keeping in mind, as I live my value, other people are doing the same thing. And it can also bring us back to that peace point of, okay, they're not a bad person. They genuinely think this is true.
Yes.
They lack education. They lack information. They want to belong somewhere. And this group of people have made them feel safe and secure. So they belong there and they have bought in there.
Yep.
And so living in your values, as you step into that, it will help you understand other people better, maybe.
I think that's really true because you have a little bit more empathy when you're really trying to understand, and when you want to be understood, then you try to understand other people too. And so it's just a really positive way to sort of practice spirituality is, where is my life not in alignment with my values? Maybe I need to work on something. Maybe I need to confront something in me and change a habit or behavior or the way I vote or whatever it is, so that it's really in alignment with what I really believe and what my ethics are.
And part of that for me, while I also firmly believe we need to educate ourselves, period, like reading BIPOC authors, I was able to attend some classes in Indigenous nations on their land and listen to them speak in their language. It was a very cool experience. That is important, but also listening to people who maybe we know they're incorrect. The earth is not flat. That's not true.
Yes.
But it's true to them. And educating myself about what they think and feel, it is another perspective, just like BIPOC, just like being on the Indigenous land and listening to their perspective and their experiences.
Absolutely.
So that is part of my spiritual practice, and yours, I think.
I agree. Yeah. I think educating yourself on things that are outside of your experience is absolutely a spiritual practice, because it fosters empathy and it fosters connection. If you know more about something, you're a lot less afraid of it. If you know more about it, you can actually appreciate it, and therefore not just dismiss it out of hand when it comes up. So like you were saying, like if you're a Caucasian person and you're reading BIPOC authors' books, you can't, and it's their experiences, right? They have different experiences than you. If you're like a straight cisgendered person and you read like LGBTQIA authors or listen to their talks or whatever, the idea is to sort of expand your perspective and create connection. And educating yourself absolutely is a spiritual practice. It really is. And I think it's also not just about educating yourself, but also creating spaces that are really welcoming or inclusive, so that people who are different can either see themselves in it, or they can or they can feel like when they walk in, they don't feel like an outsider, that kind of thing too. And it is welcoming. It has to be welcoming, not just inclusive. I was a preschool teacher for a long time, and I had a little play corner that was like playing house, you know, to have like dishes and, um, you know, a little baby broom and, you know, stuff like that.
Right.
Well, I had several kids that were from different countries or cultures in my class. So I went out and got like there was a cute little Japanese boy, so I got like a little miso bowl and like then a
Oh,
little soup
cute.
spoon and some chopsticks that were smaller so they wouldn't impale
Overwhelm.
themselves. Yeah. And then there was another little boy who I think he spoke Farsi, so he was from the Middle East. And anyway, I got like a little kind of tea, like almost like Turkish tea set, and put that in, and it was just they really loved it, and also it was stuff they were familiar with, and so it was inclusive and welcoming for them, and it wasn't just like, oh, this is what we play with at school. It was like, oh, this is what we have at home too. So, you know, this is for me. And so I think it's kind of small. It's certainly not like going to change the entire world, but it definitely made those kids feel more inclusive.
Well, and what we're talking about again is feeling as a human, right?
Yes.
This makes me feel at home. This
Yes.
makes me feel safe and secure to find things that I'm comfortable and familiar with.
Yes.
New to the human brain is often scary.
Yes.
And so if they come into an environment where nothing smells familiar, nothing looks familiar, there's nothing from
Right.
home, that can feel actually scary.
Absolutely.
And that changes their behavior. They become
Yes.
more quiet and withdrawn, and then it's not inclusive anymore.
That's true. That's true.
So I really love that you've touched on this. You don't just have to say you're welcome. You actually have to help them feel welcome.
Absolutely. It's super small, but my body doesn't really like gluten. So when we're talking about going to a restaurant or something and someone says, "Oh, I noticed there are gluten-free options there." It just makes me feel like they're looking out for me and they
You
want me
matter.
to feel, yes, like I matter. And so even little things like that can really lead to good connections that help us care about each other as people as opposed to ideologies or political parties or that kind of thing. And I think it doesn't matter how small it is because it always has a ripple effect and it always kind of goes out into the world and can spread. You know, if someone's being thoughtful of my dietary restrictions, then I'm going to make sure I'm thoughtful of theirs and, you know, that kind of thing. So I feel like there's a lot of different great like understanding and connection that can be had by creating thoughtful, inclusive atmospheres for people.
And while this sounds like a PSA on how to build bridges in our current political climate, it is not. This is meant to be a modern mystical path
Yes.
for all kinds of folks. And it is meant to reach you where you are right now today, because this is where we are right now today. We're in a divisive climate, and spirituality is a way, one path to navigate that. There's other paths, but this is how we choose to navigate this, is from a point of spirituality. And one of the things that I would love you to share is kind of about how, from your spiritual practice, you've engaged politically. I think you have a really cool
Oh, thanks.
experience with this.
Well, I think one of the things that I'm kind of a little bit overly practical because I'm a Capricorn, but but what I realized is that there are a lot of things I can't do anything about. So if I can focus on what I can do, then that makes me feel at least like there's something productive going on. So after the last general election, I just realized that there was really nothing I could do about the state of what goes on in the federal government, for example. I mean, I can still write to my senators or whatever, but I can't, there's not a lot I can do about that. But my town just became a city last year. it was a unincorporated township before that, and then the legislature made it its own city. So it's in the process of becoming a city, which is really kind of cool. And I've never really lived through that before. I've always just lived in something that was established. But I decided that if I can't do anything on like a federal level, I can definitely do something on a local level. So I just started going to the city council meetings. And sometimes I'm the only person there who doesn't have something to report or isn't kind of a stakeholder in the meeting or that kind of thing. And sometimes there are lots of people there because they have like a lot of opinions about different things, which is fine. But it has made me appreciate that I can ask questions, that I can give opinions, that I can give suggestions, even in those meetings, that I can connect to people that live around me in ways that don't have anything to do with partisanship, because we're just talking about, I don't know, how to build our roads or how to,
Right.
better, better the community, or how we're going to do like the cute Easter egg hunt every year or whatever. Like, we're not thinking to ourselves, okay, so you're this team and I'm this team, and therefore we're not going to be able to see eye to eye. And so I've really had a great experience doing that, not just because it is something I can do versus something I know I can't do, but because I did it really intentionally. And being intentional about participation in whether it's like in protests or in local government or national government or in discussions about legislation or whatever, I feel like being really intentional is being spiritually minded, because I'm intentionally trying to understand, educate myself,
Right.
connect, all the things we just talked about. And I think sometimes people, when there's like a tragedy happens, there's a lot of people that espouse thoughts and prayers or something like that. And while that is very
Sorry.
nice, and while it's very nice, it's not always the action that's needed. And so a lot of times it can end up being very, I don't know, almost coming through as hollow to people. And certainly if you really care about something, you do something. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to become like the biggest activist in your community,
Right.
but we back up our love and our values with action. And so why shouldn't we do that on a political stage as well? So yeah, and I feel like it's really nice because I also think you can be really intentional about not participating.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting I think what we're talking about partially here is living consciously,
Yes.
choosing what to participate with,
Yep.
and where to draw boundaries.
Opting in.
Yes, and where to opt out. I was super overwhelmed at one point. Save the earth, save the whales, save the dolphins, save this plant, save that plant, save the Amazon, save the rainforest. Black Lives Matter. Prison system. It is BIPOC issues, period. LGBTQIA plus issues, period. The right to marry.
Yes.
The right to love someone, anyone. The right to have children. The right to not have children. The right for bodily autonomy. It goes on and on and on. And all of these issues, native sovereignty, they're immensely important. Disability access. I can go on and on and on. Healthcare for everyone. Human right. I can't do all of those things.
Yeah.
I can barely put food on the table some weeks, like all of you. So it's overwhelming, the things that need to be changed. And this is why I must have a spiritual practice to approach the world from. I'm overwhelmed and inundated with what we should change, what ought to be different and fixed and repaired, and what needs just ripped out and started over. And there's so much that it paralyzes many of us from taking action. So first of all, I love that you did one thing. I'm going to city council meetings, period. I can do that thing. I love that. It's empowering. So for me, I had to break it down. Okay, well, I can't fix the federal level as like you. I can't fix how families are treating their teenagers that come out. I can't go around to every single parent and sit them down and say, you have a obligation and duty to love your child. The end, period. No exceptions, no ifs, ands, buts, period. That's your job. You birthed them. They have that right. You love them. The end. I don't get to do that. I don't have enough time in a day to do that.
That's true.
And be fed.
And also people would look at you like, who are you, lady? Why are you coming to tell
You
me what to
have
do with my
no
kid?
permission to speak to me. Get out, slam the door in my face, right?
Exactly.
It's not effective. It's not functional. It's not plausible. So what can I do? I can't affect how it is to be a BIPOC person in America. I'm one voice. Well, I can vote. I do that. I can, when I hear it say something, I do that. I can speak with my money. I do that. The end. That's the end of my sphere of influence. And so being realistic instead of panicking and freezing and doing nothing, do a thing today.
Yes.
Greg Braden said this beautiful, I love it. It's freeing and it's brilliant. It's about food. And I need to eat organic so I don't harm the earth and I don't harm my body and everything has to be perfect. Should I be vegan? Should I eat like our ancestors ate so I'm in tune with my body and in cycle with nature? There's so many opinions about what the right way to eat and feed your body is, which one's correct. So he made a commitment, part of his spiritual path, to himself. I will eat the best I can now, whatever that looks like. If he travels a lot and speaks a lot. If I'm in a foreign country and they present me a meal as an offering, that is the best I can in that moment. Even if it's gluten that my body doesn't tolerate, out of respect, I will eat that gluten in this moment because it's the best I can do right now. And so that is part of my spiritual practice. What's the best I can do now?
I love that.
In
It's
this
so realistic.
moment, it
You know,
is.
I like pragmatism.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, I just think it's so easy to get overwhelmed by all the things. And I don't think that compassion means that you need to jump into activism 24/7, or I don't think that compassion means you need to take in all the injustices of the world at the same time, because holy cow, we need some boundaries.
Yeah, it's too much for one.
Oh
You're
my
one
gosh.
person.
Yes, absolutely. And so I feel like, pardon me, this is one of those times where setting boundaries is a good spiritual practice as well, right? So you decide, I'm going to honor my peace or my energy, my time, that kind of thing. And it helps you kind of be able to say yes or no within what your values are. It will help you not get burned out. And then it just kind of helps you to show up really authentically, because you're not just saying yes to everything and you're not saying no to everything. And honestly, like sometimes just disengaging, because, we listen to and consume a ton of information every day through our phones, through our radios, through our TVs, through every screen we own. That sometimes disengaging is a mindful and good boundary practice to just preserve our peace of mind.
For sure.
Because there's always something to be done, but that doesn't mean you have to do it all the time. And there's always something that you could help with, but you don't have to be doing that 24/7 to your own detriment. So, kind of having boundaries will be a good way to honor yourself while also honoring what's important to you.
A quick story. I hope we have time. I want to share many, many years ago when my daughter was, first grade, kindergarten. I can't remember how old she was exactly. When she was young, I was so excited there were dolls of every kind. Oh, I just whacked my mic. Sorry about that. I talk with my hands a little too much. You would think I'm Italian. Okay. I'm not.
I love it.
And I was so excited because when I was growing up, there was only white girl dolls. And sad to say, I didn't notice that there was only white girl dolls.
Sure.
It didn't enter my head that there weren't dolls that looked like my friends that didn't look like me. But there were only white girl dolls. So when my daughter was young, there were dolls of every kind. And I loved it. And I loved that there were doctor dolls and right. So I bought her all the dolls except one, the white girl doll.
Mm.
Why? Because you don't need that. That's everywhere.
Yeah, she's got plenty of representation, doesn't she?
Yes, she doesn't need to be at this table.
Yep.
Wait a minute. So we moved into a place where it was mostly a black school system. And my kids went to school and the girls would touch her hair because she had blonde hair. And not that I'm saying she endured racism because it's not systemic and it's not, but she was a minority for sure in that school and in that class. And one day she came home sobbing. Am I ugly?
Oh.
And I was like, what? Like,
where did that come from?
No, you're gorgeous. Like, no, you're beautiful. What are you talking about? But because nothing reflected her. There was no space. I had made no space. Sorry. This was a mom learning moment. It makes me emotional. There was no space for her at her own table.
Got it.
And I think we do that when we're so justice warriors. Yes. We forget to leave space at our own table for us. I still matter as a white woman.
Yeah.
While I want to make room for every other voice, my voice should still be at the table. My peace matters.
Sure.
My body matters. And making sure I'm okay, because we run ourselves into exhaustion in this compassionate need to save the world. There's a chick on TikTok who is hilarious. She's a comedian. And she's like, I'm just a white woman out here. And she's like, no, we can't eat food because we're doing this. No, we can only eat organic food because, and that's how I feel often, torn in a million directions.
Yes.
To create space for other people. But I'm more effective in doing that if I matter.
Yes.
If I'm actually at the table.
Absolutely. Representation matters, all of it.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, that's a great place for you to be able to set some boundaries.
Yes.
Or kind of look at, how to look at, activism or affecting change as a marathon instead of a sprint, right? Like this leg of the race, we didn't have as much representation. So now we need a little bit more, that kind of thing. Or we need to talk a little bit more about what values we have, or we need to talk about where we need to back off on some of these things because we're getting burned out. And so just kind of all spirituality and spiritual practices are kind of subject to reflection, subject to revision.
Right.
And so I think the same thing is true of social activism or of trying to get your life to a place where it really does reflect your values. It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't necessarily want anyone to get in their head that if they're not doing it 100% of every minute of every day, that somehow it doesn't matter. It matters because there's a ripple effect that goes out.
Yes.
But you don't have to put so much pressure on yourself that you're like, we can't eat these carrots because they're not non-GMO.
Or they were bussed here from Cuba and now I've affected the emissions, the fossil fuels.
Sometimes you do have to do the best you can with what's in front of you, and that's okay.
Right. Right. Food deserts and inequality, the best you can do in any, that's why I love Greg Braden's. I'm going to do the best I can in this moment.
I love that. That's very doable.
It is very doable.
And it takes pressure off.
Yes. It's realistic. It's practical, and it makes space for you to be a human.
Yes. I think also this is a good place where we can talk about if you're making sure that you know why you're doing things.
Yes.
If you can kind of ground yourself in the why, to deepen your values or, that kind of thing, then you don't have to react to every single crisis. You don't have to respond to every single bad thing that happens on the news or anything like that. You can kind of go back to reorienting yourself to why you care and what you can actually do and go from there. And everybody makes an impact, even if it's small. It's So if that means you're reusing old items instead of buying new ones, if that means you're, I don't know, bringing things to the Goodwill or, or stuff like that, I think whatever you can do helps. And understanding that and being able to kind of measure that, have a lot of different ways to measure your progress, because just simply eradicating hunger worldwide is going to be a really big thing. But helping kids in your community be able to eat lunch at school or whatever is not. You could totally help with that. So there's things that if you have lots of different ways to measure it, it will help you not feel quite so overwhelmed and not quite so helpless sometimes.
I love that. I really appreciate that idea of reflection. And we talk a lot in future episodes about journaling as the spiritual practice, as meditating, and seasons. Doing your best at any time is different, and and what you're doing in any given season. I wasn't in 1992 talking about Black Lives Matter. That was in the 2000s, right? That was in the 20s of the 2000s when this became a war cry. And it was a more emphasized time for that war cry. Like you're saying, adjusting and balancing. This is the fire today.
Yes.
And being able to be responsive in that way to deal with what's present now is really powerful, I think.
I think so too. And I think it doesn't negate the little things you do to only do little things.
Right.
It doesn't make it seem, it doesn't, like, you don't have to have the same impact as someone else. You just have to have an impact that is really true to who you are. And you don't need to be doing all the things. You just need to be doing what you can well.
And what may be all you can do well is I made it to work. I put food on my table because I matter too.
Yep.
Yes. And that's as much bandwidth as you have. I know it's hard right now. That's what we wanted this episode to reach and make a connection with you, that we understand it's hard.
Absolutely.
And doing our best when it's hard is very different than doing our best when it's easy.
Oh, so true.
So do your best when it's hard, and listen to the future podcasts for practical tips about how to do that as a spiritual being and living in alignment and growing and understanding what your values are. We will dig into all of this. So, have a listen as you're putting food on your table and doing your best today.
I love that. Yeah. And thank you so much for being with us on this journey and being a modern mystic. We do have a Patreon called Modern Mystic Folk, so you're welcome to join us on there. We do little freebies and all kinds of fun stuff there. And also we have, if you'd like to leave us a review or engage us on social media and tell us, what do you do in these times? How do you incorporate your spirituality or your spiritual practice with the state of the world or the state of your community or that kind of thing? Because I feel like we can all learn from each other. So sharing our stories is one way to do that.
And we'd like to start this community with you, and your voice matters at this table. We want to hear your voice at this table.
I love that.
So today's episode was sponsored by
Readings and More by Jennafer.
and Being with Gaia. Thanks so much.